Because we have a packed hour and a half for you. Today we're going to go through a bunch of awesome people who are here to speak to you about some different aspects of the college process. But before I get into that, I want to introduce a few people to you. Josh Sands, who is our Assistant Director of College Counseling. If you guys haven't put a face to a name yet, he's 50% of the caseload, so half of you guys have Josh. Tina Murphy, who is our Administrative Assistant and Standardized Testing Coordinator. I'm sure you've all spoken to her on the phone. If you can't get a hold of one of us, Tina is your go-to person. Meredith Schaefer is our Assistant College Counselor. She is right now currently working with all the kids who are in perspectives on their college essay. She's really our essay expert within the office and writing. Michelle Gorman is a longtime friend of Foreman School. She is an educational consultant, my personal mentor, but really does a lot of work within our office and has for many years. Very familiar with Foreman School as well. On to our panel to go through here. We're going to start at the end with Dr. Kelly Miller. She consults with Foreman right now. Many of you may know her because she used to be the director of the Cognition and Learning Department and our school psychologist. Now we just can't let her go, and she consults with the College Counseling Office. She's going to talk to you a little bit about just the differences between high school and college when it comes to the documentation and guidelines and accommodations and whatnot. Lily Beretta is a current senior at Foreman right now. She is going to Loyola University in Maryland in the fall of 2018. And she's going to talk to you a little bit about the college process and give you the current student perspective. Davis Ebert, he is a Foreman alumni who graduated in the class of 2016. He's currently a sophomore at Samford University in Alabama, and he'll speak about the transition from Foreman into college. Jim Tweed is the Assistant Vice President for Enrollment Management, hang with me, it's a long title, and Dean of Undergraduate Admission and Financial Aid at LaSalle College. He's going to talk to you a little bit about LaSalle College, the specific aspects of that, but also the current landscape of the college admissions process. Then I will wrap up in the end, and I'll give you a snapshot of where the juniors are. I'm Meredith Davis, the Director of College Counseling, and we'll talk about where we're going and what the summer is going to look like and a whole bunch of that good stuff. Jim will also be holding a breakout session from 1:15 to 1:45 on financial aid. That'll be upstairs in the VPAC conference room. So if you're interested in that, Jim will hold that. That'll be after our little lunch, and it'll be an individual breakout session where he'll do some stuff on financial aid. Before we get started, though, I want to just go over the stats of the class of 2018 and kind of where that class is and where Lily and her class are right now. We are at about 300 acceptances at this point and still getting some. Believe it or not, there are some schools that haven't released everything yet. So we're about 300 acceptances at 140 different institutions, which I think is a more impressive number than the actual acceptances, 140 different places throughout the United States. We have 21 new acceptances this year, and that ranges from some schools in Canada, like Arcadia University, to Boise State University, Boston University. We got a UNC Chapel Hill acceptance this year. We got a Georgia Institute of Technology, Georgia State, University of Montana, Ohio Northern, SUNY Purchase, SUNY College of Environmental Science and Forestry, Valparaiso University, American Musical and Dramatic Academy. So you can see that we're still definitely getting our names out there throughout the entire United States. 21 new acceptances to me is something that we're really proud of. The average GPA for this class was an 89. The average SAT was a 1080. Average ACT was a 21. And the students, I get this question all the time, applied to, on average, 7 schools. We had some kids, obviously, who did more than that and some who did less than that, but our average is about 7 to 8 schools. So without further ado, I'm going to bring up Lily, who is going to talk to you a little bit about the actual current student perspective. I will ask that if you guys can just hold questions till the end. If we have time in the end, I'll open that up.
Great. Good morning, everyone. My name is Lily Beretta. I am a 3-year senior here at Foreman. I will be attending Loyola University of Maryland in the fall of 2018. I'm here today to talk to you all about why I came to Foreman and my experience just with the college process. So my freshman year of high school, I attended Good Counsel Academy, an all-girls private Catholic school that unfortunately did not provide any academic support. Good Counsel was a huge academic change coming from Windward, a co-ed middle school for children with language-based learning disabilities. I attended Windward for 6 years, and the transition to Good Counsel was more than a wake-up call. Searching for a new high school with the help of some close family friends, we came across Foreman. In many ways, I saw a lot of academic similarities between Windward and Foreman, which was comforting and ultimately made me decide to enroll here. I struggle from ADHD and an autoimmune processing disorder that delays complex information or broad topics in and outside of the classroom. I struggle with retaining information, and my mind often travels somewhere else in the classroom. This typically leads me to having to reinforce myself what I learned in class later that night while completing my homework or any other assignments. In addition, I am an awful test taker, and I suffer from anxiety that reflects in my testing. Though I have struggled with school my whole life, I have learned what I need in order to succeed. With the help of Foreman, I understand how I learn, and I know what tools I will continue to use in college. Last year, the once scary thought of applying to college became reality. It was time to start my college process, and I had no idea where to begin. But as it turned out, I was able to tackle each piece of the process little by little, especially because I had time to think about it during Perspectives in Learning class. I first had to tackle the testing. I knew that I had never been a good test taker, and with the SAT and ACTs around the corner, my anxiety levels were through the roof. Yes, the practice SATs did prepare me some, but in the end, I knew that I would be looking at test-optional schools. It was a huge relief once I realized that I still had so many options and that I would not be limited because of my standardized testing abilities. Next, I began my college essay, which surprisingly ended up not being as bad or as hard I thought it would be. Having the time to work during Perspectives in Learning really did help me complete that essay by the end of my junior year, and it became one less thing that I had to worry about, especially since the beginning of your senior year can be such a busy time. When it was finally time to start applying to schools, I had a resume that I was confident about, my essay was done, my applications were looking great, and I had a solid criteria list of what I wanted in a college. I knew that I didn't want to go to a university farther than 3 hours from my house, and I was sure that I wanted a campus that was close to a city for future internship opportunities. I also knew that I needed academic support along with small class sizes, a writing center, a tutoring center, and accessible teachers that could help me with my learning difference. I ended up applying to Moravian, Marist, Siena, Hobart and William Smith, and Loyola, Maryland. Luckily, I was accepted to all, which has been one of my greatest accomplishments this year. Loyola met all of my criteria I was looking for in a college. I'd like to share some useful tips while helping your child during this process. I recommend taking advantage of Naviance, the college and career website that partners with high schools to provide students with help in this college research. While visiting universities, try to meet with someone from their Office of Accessibility to get a better understanding of how that school could potentially tend to your child's academic needs. Finally, I would encourage touring while school is in session so you and your child can really get the feel of their college in an academic day. I hope you all find the fun and enjoyment in this process as you see your child preparing for this next exciting time in their life. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lily. Davis?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Davis Everett. I graduated Foreman in 2016. I'm currently a sophomore and attending Samford University in Birmingham, Alabama, studying geography and geographic information systems and minoring in environmental studies. So largely my field of study relies on spatial problem solving and making sense of our world today and in our future. Stepping aside from school stuff, I'm an avid and I'm an avid and passionate aviator. I have been a pilot for 7 years and am currently on track to fly for the airlines when I graduate in 2020, which is a lifelong dream accomplished. My entire school career can be centered around what some deem a disability and others a difference. At Foreman, we tend to call it a difference, but outside these kind walls of Foreman, some people see it as only a weakness and not a strength. This is something I've struggled with prior to attending Foreman. I went to a college prep school down in Tampa, Florida, where my home is. I had the social life, my athletic career was going well, but the academic side of things could have been way better. I was a C average student. I would work hard, but not smart. I spent hours struggling over what I thought were the most daunting assignments and tests. No matter my effort or the help I got from family, friends, or tutors, my grades didn't budge. To make a long story short, a few weeks into my sophomore year, my family and I decided to visit an education evaluator, and she performed the necessary tests to see if I still had evidence of a learning difference. And I did. I toured Foreman the following week, applied, and the next week I joined the class of 2016. In 3 weeks' time, I had gone from sunny Florida to the ridiculously cold and thriving metropolis of Litchfield, Connecticut. I was overwhelmed and really not very happy. That was my attitude then, and it was probably safe to say that many of other students, perhaps even your child, have felt the same way at first. I could never have predicted what Foreman would have ended up doing for me. So what makes Foreman Foreman? One could say it is about the daily structure offered here, or that it's the beautiful campus, or the clubs, or athletics. One could talk about the numbers or the data, or maybe one could say that what makes Foreman unique is its people and the environment. In my opinion, that is most accurate. Let me explain what I think makes this place what I constantly call so magical. Without a doubt, it is the people. Foreman not only brings people together, it brings out the best in them. Here at Foreman, I discovered what I like to call my 3 R's. People who did the right thing at the right time for the right reason. Whether it was Jake Klubeck, a fellow student who offered to eat a meal with me my first day because he didn't want me to sit alone. Or Tucker Fry, another peer whom I could always talk to about my various complaints. Or the faculty and staff who were there for me right at the right moments every single time I needed them without fail. This was especially helpful since I was away from my own family. There were people like Betsy Bartlett, my academic coach, helping me plan my days to make each day a little less daunting during my first year. Or my teacher, Kyle Halloran, who I could talk to about anything. Or Jeff Langell and Chris Ford, my baseball coaches, who I could rant to. Or Paul Opperman, who is not just a staff member that works in the mailroom, but a friend with a willingness to listen, always. Foreman gave me a new understanding of the word community. All of these people did the right things at the right time for the right reason. They, along with many others, helped to lay the foundation of who I am today. I remember them because they made an impact in my life and changed my perspective in positive ways that will last a lifetime. This community pushed me to be the best I could be. They were the firm foundation that gave me the confidence to step outside my comfort zone and surprise the world around me. My community boosted me up and made me realize my full potential. Because, as I always say, it just works like that here. Those are the kinds of people I hope all of your children have found and will continue to find here. At Foreman, I held many leadership roles and was a varsity athlete. But the most shocking and most meaningful recognition I received was one that I was given at graduation. The John Foreman Award, which is given to the student that best represents the school's ideals. I was so honored to receive that award 2 years ago and still haven't forgotten about it to this day. It was a symbol of who I had become at Foreman, a leader, a role model, and someone who had reached their true potential while upholding the values that Foreman stands for. My college process will likely sound familiar to you. I attended the perspectives class, met with Miss Davis, my college counselor, often, and spoke on the phone with my family often about what I wanted into college. I would spend hours breaking down my top criteria and ended up applying to many different schools that I felt were a good match for me. Receiving many acceptances was proof that I had succeeded. I really wanted to go to an aviation school, Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, but I decided with the help from my family and my college counselor that I had this unique opportunity to go to college and that a liberal arts degree would make me more well-rounded. After creating spreadsheets of where I applied to and talking it over with family, mentors, friends, and faculty, it was ultimately my decision. I chose Samford University for 3 big reasons. Number 1, it was closer to home. Number 2, it had an Air Force ROTC squadron. And number 3, it had a great resource office where I could receive the accommodations I needed in college. As I visited 10 of the schools I applied to, this one stood out to me the most, and perhaps, not surprisingly, had some similarities to Foreman. It had a great resource program and the right people who would be providing me with the services I was looking for. As you all know, colleges are required to have an Office of Disabilities. My big point here is it's not about the services they provide, it's about the people that provide them, the quality. And they are not all created equally. Researching the types of support offered at various colleges is very important. My transition to college was easier than I expected. I credit the smooth transition to the growth I made at Foreman, but I also credit this to my university's amazing summer orientation weekend, which gave me the chance to meet kids I'd be going to school with. At Samford, I have been very active in the Resource Center for my accommodations. With tests, I receive extended time, read-aloud tests, a distraction-free environment, and more. I receive these accommodations online through our portal. I always meet with my professors on the first day of class explaining my challenges and what accommodations I'll be requesting from them. The resource office staff knows me by name. There's no doubt that I learned these self-advocacy skills, communication skills, and organizational skills while at Foreman. So now I invite you to consider the following advice, which is based on my personal experience with the college process here at Foreman. Trust your child to define their own criteria, knowing that their college counselor will serve as their mentor. Let your child show you what they're made of. Even though at times they have fallen, they have always gotten back up, and they have learned along the way. As I always say, I fall all the time, I just choose to fall forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Davis. Dr. Kelly Miller.
Thank you. Most people are. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you all again. I promise, here we go. I promise I didn't pay those guys to say all the wonderful things that they said about the accommodations process, but they are right on the money, like times 100. So thank you, guys, for saying what you said, because you're right on track. So I'm here to talk about some of the things that are a little bit less fun to talk about, and I'm sorry in advance. But I'm here to talk about the differences between accommodations in high school and accommodations in college, as well as differences in documentation and kind of what that all looks like. Just as a kind of advanced warning, I will be available outside in one of the corners for questions, as these tend to be very nuanced questions, and I completely understand that, and I want to maintain confidentiality to the greatest extent possible. So, without further ado, I would say probably the biggest change from high school to college, and Davis touched on it just a little bit, talking to that Office of Disability Services. It's the burden of proof and the burden of responsibility falls squarely on the shoulders of your student, 100%. So that's very challenging. That can be a very difficult transition. So the student must self-identify at the Office of Disability Services at whatever college they do choose to attend. There is actually a law called the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, FERPA, published or put together, I'm not a lawyer, in 1974, so it's been around for a very long time. And it basically indicates that students must sign permission, authorization for parents to even communicate with the Office of Disability Services at the school that that student attends. So it's very important that your student, as Davis kind of talked about, knows that office, knows the people in that office. These are their people, for lack of a better term. This is where they go when they have a problem in college. And so it's very, very important that they feel comfortable in that office and that they feel comfortable expressing their concerns and their desires for certain accommodations or whatever the case is, because I hate to be the spoiler alert here, you guys can't. So you can coach your student through it, but your student has to be the one to request the accommodations. No IEPs are developed in college. The Office of Disability Services will have an accommodations plan for the student, and the way that this information is shared with professors varies by school. So Davis indicated that he goes up to his individual professors at the end of every kind of first class of the semester and describes what accommodations he's been eligible for and what he's accustomed to receiving. Different schools will, I've literally seen a student click on a website which accommodations he was eligible for and which ones he wants for which classes. That was University of Arizona SALT program. So that's a very different kind of program and how they request accommodations than what Davis has described. So it's very, very, very important to do your research, as Davis has indicated. I promise I didn't pay him. I didn't even review his write-up. But the other thing that's also important to keep in mind is that not only are these there are differences in how the students request accommodations, but there's also a difference in terms of, for some schools, they'll make you request accommodations every single semester. Say, hey, I'm still an active student. I still want these accommodations. Or this is what changed from last semester. Here's what I think I might need on my biology, or in my biology class this semester. So it varies, again, by school. It's very, very, very important to do that research and to ask the difficult questions at those visits or when you call, anything like that. As opposed to high school and in a more traditional public school setting, modifications are not made to the curriculum in college. So you simply have accommodations. And appropriate documentation absolutely must be submitted in order to receive services and accommodations. There is one exception to the rule, and I think it was University of Arizona. It has a very, very lenient documentation policy, not to be confused with the SALT program. Or maybe it was Arizona State, one of the Arizona schools. But their process is very, very lenient. The rest of them, they want that documentation. So that's also dependent upon the individual school. So when the documentation was requested varies depending on the school. For instance, if you have a student who is applying to a support program, like the Pell program at Curry or the CAP program at Iona, or even Lynn University, they want the documentation with the application. And that's because those are very specialized support programs, and you can only be eligible for those support programs if you have an identified learning disability, and I do use that word. That's the word that they'll use in college. An identified learning disability and or ADHD. So they want to verify that that is present before you can even be considered for acceptance into that program. If not, if your student's not applying to a very specific support program, you simply submit the documentation once the decision has been made, so in May or June. Oftentimes I like to say wait until their semester is over before inundating them with new information, because you never know, it gets a little harried in those offices during finals weeks because they're doing a lot of accommodations, providing a lot of accommodations to students. So I always say, wait a little bit, let them have a breather, and come back fresh. Although the timeline of what is considered to be a current evaluation varies by each individual institution, again, varies. If you're sensing a theme, it's true. Generally, 3 years is considered to be current. However, I will say I've seen requests for testing as recent as 2 years and as old as 5. So different schools do it very differently, and sometimes they're more lenient and sometimes they're more strict. So again, very, very helpful to do that research ahead of time. Evaluations must be comprehensive. It must include measures of cognitive functioning, academic achievement. It may require some evaluators or some schools may require social emotional functioning or behavioral tests, or other processing measures, just depending upon kind of what's in your student's psychological profile. And generally, schools will post this on their website. So here's a good rule of thumb for when you're looking for some of this information. I think, Lily, you called it Office of Accessibility. I've always called it Office of Disability Services. Different schools call it different things. So if you go to the main page of the website and you click on the search button, the little, what is that thing called?
Search bar.
Magnifying glass, thank you. So if you click on that and it comes up with a search bar, just type in Office of Disability Services or Disability Services. It will come up with whatever name is relevant for that particular institution, but you can start to click around on that website, get some information. They might have a section on the website called Documentation Guidelines. That's going to tell you what kind of evaluation guidelines they have, whether they want it within 3 years, 2 years, 5 years, anything like that. Specific measures they may be looking for. If they don't include that information, don't hesitate to give them a call and just simply ask, what are your evaluation document or your documentation guidelines? Sometimes they have them, sometimes they don't. Individual schools will determine which accommodations are reasonable and appropriate based upon the evaluation. This is completed on a case-by-case basis. So we can't necessarily guarantee that a student who received X, Y, and Z accommodations at Foreman will also receive X, Y, and Z accommodations in college, because it's up to their review process to determine what is both reasonable and appropriate. For the most part, having spoken with a number of these offices throughout the years, and having worked with these offices in previous settings and in current settings, it's really helpful to see that the Offices of Disability Services are really starting to ask a lot of questions of the student, really trying to get to know what has worked for that student in the past, and really engaging in that dialogue rather than just receiving the documentation, saying this is what you're approved for, and sending off to the student. So there's more of this kind of two-way exchange, and that can be very, very helpful to ensure that our students receive the supports that they need. That's it in a nutshell. It's a lot of information. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. I'll try to find a corner so that we can have some private conversations following the full presentation. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Kelly. And now, Jim Tweed. Take this right off. He's a mover. He's going to get down in front.
I'm going to go rogue here. Oh. Well, good morning, or still, is it good afternoon yet? Just about good afternoon. Thank you, Meredith, for having me. It's a pleasure to come back to Foreman School. This is probably my fifth,
Gotta be 5 years, yeah.
sixth time coming to Foreman. Excuse me, I speak to you from a variety of standpoints. One, as an assistant vice president for enrollment management at LaSalle College for the past 15 years, and as chair of the Admissions Practices Committee for NEACAC, the New England Association of College Admissions Officers, and as the Current Trends Committee chair as well for that association. So I have a number of perspective lenses to talk to you about the admissions process through. And then personally, I have a twin brother who had married this job for about 9 years at the Trinity Pauling School, and now he is a headmaster at an institution down in New Jersey. So I've, for many years, had a chance to speak with him about the college search process as he was helping his 90 young men or so each year go through the college search. So let me start off by talking a little bit about how college admissions works. And I'm guessing, if you could help me out by a show of hands, for how many of you is this your first child going off to college? Wow, interesting. So how many have done this more than twice? I'm going to ask you to come up here and join me. You sure? Because you're probably at the expert level now. There are 4,000 plus colleges in the country. And if we start to include Canada and moving outside the United States, the list gets larger. Let me tell each of you, from the bare bones perspective, there's a college university for each of your sons and daughters. Presentation's over. They will find a home somewhere, and I use the word home because I love the way Davis put it. Home and the right fit are very important. Similar reasons why you chose Foreman. The challenge is that of those 4,000 colleges and universities in the United States in particular, each of us have our own way of doing this in terms of how we work with students through the admissions process. And it starts very basically with how the heck do you apply? And what tool do you use to apply? I'm guessing many of you have heard of the Common Application. It's supposed to be common. That means the questions are the same for all the institutions that accept it. But then they have supplements or additional questions that a particular institution wants answers to. So what was supposed to be common can very quickly become uncommon. There's also the universal application, not quite as familiar with families, but some institutions require that or use that tool. And then many schools have their own applications, either through an online portal, and I've still heard of a couple of schools that require or use paper applications. You want to hold the questions to the end? Do you want to?
I'd like to hold it.
The difference between the universal and the common? The name on the top of the application? Simply speaking, I think just the company that has developed the application and the behind-the-scenes software. The Common App has a very broad following or membership. I think there's, nearly 1,000 schools now that participate with the Common Application. The Universal Application is somewhere around 350, 400. And I did forget to mention a new application method that's come about. I'm not sure if you've had any experience with it yourself, but it's the one that the Ivy schools are using now.
The coalition?
The Coalition application.
Yeah.
So I left that off because I am not as familiar with the Coalition application. Have you had any
I
experience?
filled it out once
Once?
with one kid in the 9 years when it just started a few years ago, but I filled it out once.
So let me start off by saying I'm a common sense guy with a common sense approach. That's how I've run my department for the last 15 years. That's why I enjoy being at LaSalle College. If I'm a young person, I want to fill out one application and try to send it to all the schools if I can. However, I often get asked the question, since we have our own application at our institution online, and we're a member of the Common App, which one should I choose, and does it make a difference? And the answer is, to us, it does not. It does not make a difference which one you choose. I think for the ease of use of the end user, your student, if all the institutions they're applying to accept the Common Application, by all means, complete the Common Application once and be done. All right? If all the institutions your child is applying to, some are universal, some are common, some are their own specific institutional applications, then they're stuck completing all those different variations. And I apologize for that. Application fees, I didn't even go into that really in terms of the types. Many schools have an application fee, and I'm going to speak, I won't get up on the soapbox, but I could. I don't understand application fees anymore because all of this is done electronically. Students fill out information online. It literally, the magic of the internet, it comes into our student information system, right into our online tool that we use. There's no middleman, there's no person doing data entry. I don't know why institutions require students to pay for an application. Years ago, when our institution had to pay a team of people to do data entry, it made sense. Now it doesn't make sense to me. There are application fee waivers if you need or require those, but I know the application fees are going up and up and up. I sometimes think that's a way of limiting access to some institutions, or maybe showing how serious you are about considering that school. So something to consider. The application processes themselves. So once your students apply, they have to decide how they're going to apply. Is it going to be early decision, early action, or regular admission? And from our experts in the back, I don't want to put you on the spot. Do you know the difference between the early decision and the early action?
Yes.
Help me out.
Okay, so early decision, you usually get a decision by, I'd say December, often, but then you have to, you're obligated to accept it.
Correct. The timing, the deadlines can be a little bit varied, but you're absolutely right that if you're applying early decision, and this goes back to, I'm 20 years in the field, it used to be one early decision application because it was your first choice school. And how many first choices can you have? It's not a trick question. However, we often will hear of students who have applied to more than one early decision school. So they may have more than one first choice, which, again, not a trick question, but not sure how that works. The goal of early decision is it's a binding agreement between your child and the institution. Actually, Meredith has to sign off on that as well. So you're actually putting foreman, in some cases, at some risk there if a child applies to more than one institution through early decision. There are some deadline changes that if a child applies to one school early decision, gets a decision that's not favorable in a certain deadline, and then another deadline for another school is after that early decision, they could submit 2 early decision applications, but in different processes for two different institutions at different times. Does that make sense? That's what I say when I give this presentation in many high schools, the words I use often is, it depends. When someone says, how does this work? It depends. Depends upon the school, depends upon the process, depends upon the student. Early action is another, and just like early decision in terms of you get the decision sooner, right? That's the goal. So students find out earlier and earlier. And if I told you that I could get your son or daughter a decision in July, what would your reaction be? That sounds crazy. Head to the West Coast, to the Midwest. There are institutions offering decisions to students, high school juniors, once they've completed their junior year, July and August. Happens. Here on the East Coast, we're a little bit more traditional. We wear bow ties and fancy socks, and we decide that we'd like to get decisions out to students in September. I think that's September, October, November is generally when most decisions are going out for early decision and early action. At LaSalle College, we have an early action program. It's not binding, and decisions go out by Thanksgiving. And we are not the first school to release our decisions in our area. We know other institutions are sending out decisions before us. Regular admission, almost who applies regular anymore? No one does that. But there are still many institutions that have a broad regular decision program. It could be deadline driven, applications have to be in by a certain date, or it could be rolling admission. Anybody heard of rolling admission? Definition, want to help me out? This is the interactive portion of the program. This beautiful auditorium, you have to fill it. Definition of rolling admission?
You can apply whenever.
You can apply whenever. Yes and no. There's no deadline for the application potentially, but it's really how the institution processes the application. They're going to review it and get a student a decision within let's say, a rolling basis. They're not going to release their decisions by a certain date. Deadline admission, applications have to be in by a certain date, decisions go out by a certain date. Rolling admission, applications can come in on a rolling basis with decisions going out on a rolling basis. Make sense? Okay. So what makes an application complete? And this is fairly standard stuff, so if I'm boring you, please don't nod off. Just raise your hand and I'll move on. What we're looking for, and this is generally speaking, there are some nuances for schools and certain majors. So if your son or daughter is an artist and thinking about architecture or an art program, or they're going to apply to a music program, they may have some additional requirements in terms of portfolios or auditions. But generally, institutions are looking for a high school transcript, where that's a calculated GPA from a transcript, a traditional transcript. It's a narrative approach. It's a homeschooled approach. They're looking for some academic record of the last 3 years of high school. And for early decision and early action, that's basically what we're looking at. We're looking at freshman, sophomore, and junior year of high school, 3 years, okay? And the reason why is, again, common sense. We don't have access to the senior year grades that early on in the cycle. So if your son or daughter comes home and says, I'm not having the best senior year, you might think, well, that's good, they're not looking at it. But eventually we will get it. We'll get the final high school transcript and we'll do some fact checking just to make sure what we were looking at or what we predicted before has come true. High school transcript, senior grades if necessary. Some schools, if they're on a rolling admission process, may ask for those senior grades after the first of the year, or after the first quarter or first semester is completed, first trimester is completed at the secondary school. They're looking for usually an essay. The college essay is important. I know Lily talked about her college essay. It wasn't that daunting to complete. I'll talk more about how we look at essays through the review process in a second. But the essay, letters of recommendation, the list of extracurricular activities, what students are involved in, like Davis involved in athletics here, those are things that schools want to see, that they're getting a well-rounded student, well-rounded applicant. I'm not sure if the laser, it does work. Standardized test scores, I know Lily was concerned about hers, and many students at Foreman and many of the schools that I visit are concerned about their standardized tests. That's why it's wonderful now to see so many institutions have gone test optional. And so again, it depends upon the school that your student is applying to, whether those are required or not. And if they require an SAT 1 or an ACT or AP scores or SAT 2 scores, again, it depends upon the school. It also depends upon the major they're applying to. So at LaSalle College, for example, we are test optional except for a handful of programs where the standardized test results are actually a predictor, because generally the research has said they're not a predictor of success in college, which I think you probably all know, but they are a predictor of the results at LaSalle on the, what we're calling board examination scores for students in our athletic training program, our health science programs. They are predictors of success on the MTEL for students in our education program, because those state examinations or board certification examinations for our academic programs are also standardized tests. And so if you're going to apply to an athletic training program at LaSalle and expect to graduate as an athletic trainer, we want to make sure you're set up to do that and can be successful. And if you struggle with standardized testing coming out of high school, that may be a struggle for you still once you've completed the curriculum at the institution. I'm a huge proponent of the interview, me personally, and I'll share a quick story with you. I missed an entire year of high school. One entire year. Sophomore year, I did not attend one day of, well, a couple days of class. And if I didn't have the opportunity to talk to an admissions counselor at the institution I eventually enrolled at, that information would have never really come out on an application. I wrote about it in my essay, but that requires that an admissions counselor read the essay carefully. And if they didn't do that, which I'm hoping they did, I wanted to make sure they heard my story. And so the interview for me was a very important piece. And so I advocate for students to interview, with one caveat. If they're prepared to do so, and if they're comfortable doing so. The last thing we want to see in our admissions office is mom and dad dragging that kid in, kicking and screaming because Jim said it's important to interview. If they're not comfortable presenting themselves in that manner, don't make them do that. But if they are comfortable doing it, and you believe that they have a story to tell, or they believe they have a story to tell, and sometimes students do present themselves very differently in person than they do on paper, I advocate for the interview, based on their comfort level, not yours. So how do we actually make decisions? How am I doing on time?
You're right.
Okay, give me the hook if you need to.
Okay.
So, very quickly, many institutions use what's called a holistic review, where they read everything. That's what we do at LaSalle College. We read certainly through the application, we recalculate the high school GPA, I'll talk about that in a second. We read the essays, letters of recommendation, we take into consideration the interview. So many of the schools, I think, Meadows will be suggesting for a lot of your students, will look at a holistic review process. And that's what it means. They're looking at everything. And in many cases, more than one pair of eyes are part of that admissions decision, part of that admissions review process. So for us, we have at least 2 individuals who will do the initial review, and then we'll come to an admissions committee, which I chair. And if it's an easy decision, a common sense decision, we move very quickly through it. If there's more for us to talk about, then we spend more time, reviewing that applicant's candidacy. Some institutions use a sliding scale. If you're getting 35,000, 40,000 applications for admission, the holistic review process may not be realistic. So they're looking at a calculation of a GPA, a calculation of maybe in a standardized test, and they're using a scale. You can't talk and move the microphone at the same time. Higher GPA, lower SAT score, higher SAT score, lower GPA. You get a sense of admissions, how admissions decisions may be made. I mentioned earlier in terms of special interest or talent, if your son or daughter is looking for if they're a ballerina, they're a musician, they're an artist, they're into architecture, there may be additional requirements, portfolio presentations, maybe auditions that are going to be part of the review process. And that's a bigger part for some of those institutions and their admissions practices. A question for you to ask admissions officers, and I think it's a fair one, and one they should not hide behind any general language, they should be transparent, is do they recalculate the high school GPA from the school or not? And what I mean by that is, how do they actually look at the courses and the GPA that Foreman has presented to them? So for us, for example, we look at just the academic subjects over the first 3 years of high school. So if your son or daughter is at an institution that has, well, they're here, so if an elective course is factored into their GPA, which we know it is, we're not using that to make our admissions decision. We're just using the math, the science, and the social studies and the English over the 4 years to make our decisions. We look at the other courses, it's part of our review, but to do the calculation of the GPA and to recalculate that, we're just using academic courses. We also strip out the weighting of high schools. That's our process. So if they've weighted for honors, AP, IB, dual enrollment programs at universities, we'll take whatever weighting the high school has offered out, and we'll apply our own scale, our own weighting to that GPA. Again, we're trying to look at standardization, trying to make sure every school, an A at a school in California is similar to an A at a school in New England. Also, it's fair to ask how they weigh the activities. Is the fact that your son or daughter is student body president, or been involved in drama, or has participated in a sport, how much does that factor into the admissions process? And you also need to consider what division sport they're preparing to play in. Is it Division 1, 2, or 3? I have an 8-year-old. He thinks he's playing for Manchester United someday. We're going to let him have that dream for a while. But when he says to mom and dad, can we go on vacation to Old Trafford, to the Theater of Dreams? Sure, he's 8. We'll get you there someday. Will he ever play soccer at that level? We have no idea. But if your son or daughter is considering playing at the college level or university level, what division? Because different divisions have different requirements. And then, of course, the strength of the curriculum and the strength of the school. You're all blessed to have sent your students here. Many of us in admissions know Foreman very well, specifically in New England. You heard the list of institutions that Meredith rattled off in terms of how many have offered acceptances to the students here. And the outreach that Foreman does to the college counseling staff does to us is fantastic. So we know exactly where your son or daughter is, and are they being recommended to be successful at our institution. So you're in a good place in terms of the institutions understanding the strength of Foreman. So before I take questions to go into LaSalle, I want to quickly, if I can, change something up. So I've been at LaSalle 15 years, and this is a quick introduction to our institution.
Get up early.
It's where I don't settle for good. I always strive for great.
It's where my voice is heard.
My thinking is challenged.
And my success is supported at every step. It's where wisdom is valued.
And where I chase down the new.
New things, new ideas, and new places.
That drive me to go even further.
I know I can.
I can.
I can.
I will.
At LaSalle, I already am.
And I'm just getting started.
This is where I found my calling.
And where they know my name.
Where I can develop
develop the skills to follow my passion.
And the drive to make a difference.
It begins with a handshake.
And ambition turns into action.
Where I go from intern to in charge.
Where I push past good enough.
And never stop exploring.
Equipped with confidence, I know I can. Guided by experience, I know I will.
I struggle.
But I never quit.
I try.
I try again.
I try harder.
I achieve. I flourish. I triumph. And I am always ignorant of defeat.
Here, I am me.
The passionate me.
The purposeful me.
The person I always knew I was.
And the one the world needs me to be.
Great isn't a destination. It's a journey.
I will always have more to learn.
And this is where it begins. Nothing is going to stand in the way of my success.
I am.
I am.
I am in pursuit of great.
So I'm not going to go through all the information about LaSalle College, but I just wanted to give you a quick comment that I heard from Davis and Lily that I thought was really relevant. In terms of the right people, the right time, and the right reasons. Those are great. The 3 R's was very compelling for me. I've been at LaSalle College for 15 years, and we have grown tremendously. And as you're looking for institutions, I think it's important for you to know it's not just about the services that a college university can provide your son or daughter. It's also about the approach to education itself. And so I'm going to jump ahead because all of those things you can get on our website. Except for this. This is the hallmark of LaSalle. It's called connected learning. And it's actually our educational teaching method. And it's very different than what I'm doing right now. I'm lecturing to you, and I'm not very good at it. Because generally, when I give presentations at LaSalle, it's more interactive, trying to replicate what we do in the classroom. And the best way I can describe that for you is with an example. I don't know of many of us that work in a field where we're asked to memorize information or get lectured to for an hour or an hour and a half or 8 hours a day, and then 2 or 3 weeks later we sit for an examination, and then we get paid on how well we scored on that examination. There are very few, I don't think there are any careers where that happens. So since 1851, we've been practicing a teaching philosophy which is a hands-on applied approach to teaching that replicates what the real world is actually like. We have no lecture halls. Many of our classrooms are set up as seminars where our faculty, average class size is about 17. The faculty are engaging the students in the work of the field, whether that's fashion, whether that's sport management or business, communication, education. We have 40 plus majors. How they do that is the most important part. They're bringing in real world examples into the classroom, infusing it with the theory that's necessary to learn the material. And how students demonstrate mastery is by actually doing it, as opposed to being tested on it constantly. And so the best example I can give you is my own. I went to a very large public high school on the Cape. I would say I was an okay student, but I will tell you right now that after sitting in a classroom for 50 minutes or an hour and being lectured to and scribbling down notes, and every 3 weeks spitting back the information on an exam and showing the professor that way, the teacher that way, that I was a good student, my parents were always about, well, what did you learn this week? What did you learn today? And I can't tell you how many times I came home and said, I don't know. Because the material wasn't sticky. I didn't retain it. And so now with an 8-year-old, I ask my son the same question every day when he comes home from school. What'd you learn today? And he looks at me, We played kickball. Like, what did you learn today? Give me one thing, because I'm trying to figure out, even as an 8-year-old, was there something in the curriculum, something that the teacher did that made something stick in his head? You have the benefits of having your students here, because that's certainly a hallmark of this institution. And I think that's important for you to think about as you look for the next institution for your sons and daughters. It's not just about the services that are provided, because I'm sure you'll seek those out and your students will seek those out and be proactive and advocate for themselves. It's also the teaching philosophy as well. And this is one of the reasons why I enjoy being at LaSalle College, is that this just makes sense to me. Doing the work of the field, hands-on, in all programs, whether it's English or fashion or communication, just makes sense. So I think I'm probably close to my time.
You have a few more minutes.
I do? That's never happened in my 5 years of being here.
I've also altered mine. I know you now.
So I'm going to let Meredith jump back into the guts about college counseling, but I really want to thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Just going to plug my computer in, because I'm going to give you more facts on where we are, where we're going, what the summer should look like, and anything that comes up. Obviously, you guys all have conferences with Josh and I, so we can answer a lot of those individualized questions when we have the conferences. But first, I really want to thank our entire panel for coming in here. I hope that they gave you a good insight into the process. You know, I stand up here every year and I listen to the senior and the alumni that we bring back, and I'm reminded of why we do what we do, why you guys as parents try so hard, why us as educators work so hard. It's because of these guys. It's because of the success story that they build based off of their challenges, you know, and getting to know themselves and understanding everything. So it just really, I always am inspired to sit up here and listen to these guys kind of go through their process and help me remember. Okay, so no, we're good because it's only a few slides. So what's been done? Where are your juniors now? What have we been doing for the last 2 months? You know, where we have that perspectives and learning class, but also Josh and I have been working really hard to gain relationships and to develop a college list and kind of start this process, a trusting relationship. So our goal within the college counseling office is really to help guide and provide support to you as parents, but also to the students. You know, we're there to help the student find a place where they'll be happy, successful, confident, and comfortable, right? That's our goal. You guys found Foreman. I'm assuming you are still here, so it was the right fit for them in high school. We want that exact same thing in college. You know, all of these guys have explained that beautifully. Jim, I don't even know that you know this. We have 2 kids enrolled to go into LaSalle. So we clearly love that school as well, and we're really excited because they foster exactly what we're looking for. And it's not just LaSalle, you know, it could be a large school. It's based off of the students. If you've gotten anything from this panel, it's individualized. This whole process is individualized and really is personalized by the student and by you guys as a family. So just to give a little bit of kind of black and white what has been done. So right now they are definitely discovering themselves as a learner. I think Lily did a great job articulating exactly who she was as a learner. I don't know that we could have done that 2.5 years ago. You know, it's definitely, it's a process. And that's what part of this college piece is about, and looking at post-Foreman is what do you need? You know, a need versus a want. We really focus on that. So we're talking to the kids about that. They've also taken career assessments and personality inventories, a whole bunch of that stuff to get more of the concrete details. But a lot of it is just conversations and helping them understand what they might need. Gain a sense of independence and confidence. For me, that's one of the most important goals of this process, is because they should be in the driver's seat, right? We can put in as much as we want, but without the student kind of being invested and involved in it and having the confidence to do all of that, I think is really important. So we help them find that sense of independence and confidence within this process, and that is through simply understanding college websites and how to get on there, you know? Sometimes the kids don't even know what a website, how to research website, how to find the majors on there. They sit in that class and they think it's busy work. To us, it's really, really important stuff so that they can say, we can be like, oh, let's go research LaSalle. They know how to actually go and research LaSalle, and they can confidently do it on their own. Obviously, we've had individual meetings with counselors. That will continue throughout the rest of the year. Josh and I, basically our process is we just cycle through. So sometimes it takes us 2 weeks to get through all the kids, and then we'll start over. Sometimes it takes us a little longer. If a student wants to meet with us every time we're on duty, absolutely, 100%. Again, individualized. We get to kind of make this process whatever the kids want it to be. College research, Naviance and College Board, we are getting them on those websites so that they're really familiar with it. I don't know if you guys have been on Naviance, but they just actually changed the website. So everything we've been doing from January until now, getting them used to knowing where to go and how to research. Naturally, they, in the middle of the semester, changed the websites, and so we're helping the kids kind of get in there and understand it. But I do think it's more user-friendly now with this new system, and there's now an app that they can download right on their phone, which there wasn't one before. College Board is just another really good website that we're getting them on. It's just a data service for the students. Solid understanding of the college process, so just continuously talking about where we're going, what we're doing, and why we're doing it so that they really know the goals of it as well. Suggested college list, you guys should all be in on those conversations. You might find that some of your students within Naviance, maybe you're like, oh my gosh, what are they even thinking right now? This is not, we're on different planes. Josh and I are aware, usually, but it really is about getting the kids building that independence and confidence. I want to make sure that they're being heard. Maybe we all agree that a big school isn't the best choice and they have 15 big schools on there, but you might also notice some other smaller schools in there that we're working into the process. So just know that it's a process, but if there is concerns, absolutely have those conversations with us. We really believe in the parent involvement in this. College visit debrief, I always think that's a really big and important piece of this puzzle. Is, you know, a student might say that they want a big school or they want a small school or they want a city school. A lot of kids say that. They want to be right in the heart of a city. We go visit city schools, right? And they're like, oh, that might not be at all what I want. So we help them kind of debrief what that means, you know, or if they visited a big school and they're like, I love the school spirit, but I'm really nervous about the class sizes. You know, we talk about what are the options then. We can look at medium schools that might have small class sizes, but a lot of school spirit. So just debriefing those is what we've been working on. Working college criteria list, right? That's just kind of really concretely narrowing down what we want in a school. That's through conversations. A lot of the students took the April ACT. It was a very, very successful day. There was a lot of anxiety, but I don't think that, I think we made it out okay, kids and the college office. And then they've also began the college essay process. This is a little different and kind of confusing sometimes. If they have a thinking and writing or subject-specific class, they're doing the college essay with Lily Chen. If they don't have those classes, they're doing it in perspectives with Meredith Schaefer and the teachers within there. So it just depends on what the students' classes look like. Lily Chen has been doing it for years. She's excellent. And then Meredith Schaefer kind of takes on the umbrella of the college essay with the kids who are not in those thinking and writing or subject-specific classes. What will be done? Where are we going? So we have 5 weeks left in this school year. It's also my countdown, which is excellent. Finalize really before they leave. This is what our goal is. We want to finalize college criteria list, right? We want them to have a solid sense of where and what they want in a college. We want to, we'll continue to have individual meetings with their counselor. We're offering those college weekly workshops. We are through that, but we have 2 left. We have the SAT practice test for anybody who's taking the SAT this weekend. That starts at 2:30 on Sunday and will run through 5:30, and then if they don't finish, we have them come back on Tuesday night. And then May 6th is about creating a summer action plan, and those are our Sunday office hours every Sunday, and we do this throughout the whole year, so just to know for next year as well, we have college counseling office hours. The May SATs are next weekend, so some students will be taking those. We want to go home with a working college list and a working college essay. I use the word working because a lot happens over the summers. A lot of things could be tweaked, a lot of, maybe you go on college visits and we need to continue to tweak the list and the criteria. Working college essay because somebody could have a great experience over the summer, or maybe, their aunt is excellent at helping with writing their essay and they want to write a whole new one. Just things happen. So we use the word working. Meredith Schaefer is available throughout the entire month of June to help any students with their college essay. So especially if you're local, pop the kids in, bring them in. We will work with them if you want 1 hour a day for 2 weeks straight. Absolutely, we can make that happen. Meredith is also really savvy with Skype and Google Docs. So if we know that we're home for a week and we need to do something with the kids with their, whether it's starting their Common App or working on their essay, we can definitely do that and help you throughout that process. The students, and this is something that's a little different that Foreman does that some other schools don't do, the students actually ask their teachers for recommendations at the end of the junior year. And then obviously can ask other teachers in senior year, but we do that so that they have time to write the recommendations and it's not a rushed process. So they have 3 months, they can write it fresh, right? And a lot of teachers choose to write them in June as soon as they finish the school year, so they remember kind of how they ended and what that all looks like, and not the middle of senior year where they hadn't had them for a few months. So we do have the students ask their teacher recommendations. That process will start hopefully next week, where we're talking to them about who to ask and what that looks like. We typically recommend that the students ask 2 teachers, one a math science kind of person and one an English, history, thinking and writing teacher. However, again, individualized. If we're going into art school, you certainly want art recommendations in there. If you know you're going into a marine biology major, maybe you want 2 science instead of a thinking and writing. So it varies by student, but typically we ask them to have 2 teacher recommendations. And then with our advisee system, a lot of students choose to ask their advisor as well. Totally fine if you want some additional ones, that makes perfect sense, or a coach or somebody outside. It's definitely a conversation that we have with the students and that we certainly can have with you guys as well. They will build a resume and they will hopefully start the Common Application, if not become familiar with the Common Application. That start of the Common Application just depends on how far we get in the Perspectives in Learning class. That's kind of the last piece that we do. We'll give them an overview of what that looks like with the goal of actually getting them in there and starting a Common App. And then whenever the test scores come back, standardized testing review on, talking through what tests we retake for next year. If we retake any, do we want to, take the SAT if I already took the ACTs, just kind of going through all of that. So they have a busy 5 weeks ahead of them. And then finally, just summer goals for the student. So this is really what the hope is when they come back in September. And I think Lily had mentioned this, and Davis can definitely speak to it. Senior year is busy. It's busy, there's a lot of fun things. They take a lot of senior trips, but it's also you're doing classes and you're probably doing hard classes and you are trying to prepare for standardized tests. It's a busy time of year. So as much as you can get done in this application process over the summer, it's really helpful and it really benefits the kid. Lily, would you agree with that? Getting done as much as you can over the summer. They will have that Perspectives in Learning class that first semester of senior year, and that is all about the application process. So if they come back and they need to work on their portfolio, that's the only thing left, they have that class every other day for 75 minutes to work on that. But even that can get kind of daunting if it's just, oh my God, I have all of this stuff to do. So as much as you can get done. Our goal is a finalized college essay, finalized college list, completed common application, fall standardized testing plan, so just an idea of what tests we want to take. You guys for the fall will get another checklist. We send out a summer mailing that will just say, because we offer 4 tests in the fall, you just, same thing, put a little check mark on the test that you want your student to take, and Tina, our God in the office, will take care of everything else from there. We just need to know what tests from you guys. Complete portfolio auditions. This one is really important if it's applicable, because that process is big. It's a lot of work and it's really difficult for the kids to find the time to do it here. So I would definitely recommend completing any portfolio or audition tapes that we need to happen. Do as much as you can with that this summer. Have a productive summer, make sure that the students are doing something that they can put on their application. A lot of times, and Jim was talking about supplements, one of the questions that comes up is how do you spend your summers? So you want to make sure that we're putting in there something that is tangible. And something that also just helps them grow as a student, as a person. And then continue to update their resume. And that resume will be available via Google Docs, so the kids can certainly share that with you. We do a lot in Google Drive, so that it's all just kind of accessible to everybody involved in the process. Typically we have them share everything with Josh and I so that we have access to it. So if they can't find it or something, ask us, and we usually will have a copy of the resume and the essay and that kind of stuff. We are right on time for lunch. So what we're going to do now is everybody in the panel will certainly be out there. Like Kelly said, she'll be in a little corner, so if there are any questions individualized to the accommodation process or disability services in the college, please don't hesitate to go see her. We are going to mingle. I think there's some high top tables out there. We're going to mingle. Michelle Gorman will be available for questions as well. She is as knowledgeable as Jim, so anything admission-wise, certainly ask her about it. Between Jim and her, the experience is probably at 50 years at this point. So we want to... Yeah, so 2 things. One, a great question, is you guys can certainly get this PowerPoint, but we've also have it on videotape, this whole presentation. So if you missed anything, that is going to be available as well. But yeah, this PowerPoint I can certainly just send out easily. Awesome. Josh will be out there. Tina will be out there. Meredith, if you guys have any questions about essays, will be out there as well. So don't hesitate to contact us. And we will also be at cocktail receptions, and we'll be around all weekend. So if there are any questions, please let us know. Yeah, well, it's a little late for you, We have one tonight, right? 5 to 6. You want to come? You can have my cocktails. Awesome. Thanks, guys.